Thank you very much for that. Next, I'd like to invite our partner showcase, Durham University and Proact. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Very much appreciate the invite. It's been a pleasure to come and listen to some people, but also to talk to you as well. Very happy to have Andy up here from Proact as well. I was going to make a comment about having another Andy, but just looking around the room, I think it's just a Durham thing. We tend to have more Andys in IT than we do women, but I'm not quite sure what's going on there. So I'll crack on. So we're here to talk to you about some of the work we've been doing. We're very proud of the work we've been doing in some of our infrastructure replacement programs. But predominantly, we're here to talk about the storage element of it today and how we've partnered with Proact and changed the way we consume services, basically, and the opportunities that it gives to us. So we've had a few challenges. I'm sure it would sort of ring true to most people that all universities are a little bit different and a little bit individual, and you've all got your own bespoke challenges. So we tried on a previous iteration of an infrastructure replacement program to ignore them and to put more commodity hardware in and more commodity software. It's a lot cheaper, it's a lot easier to manage. As it says, we tried. It didn't really work. We have functionality that we weren't actually giving out to our users. Capacity, you've never got enough storage. We're a research heavy university. There's never enough capacity. We are at the limit. We need to do something about it ASAP. The whole sort of one size fits all. We were lucky enough at the university, we had NetApp technologies in, and we actually bought the NetApp from Proact. It was a metro cluster, so it's synchronously copied across 2 data centers. Fabulous service, great product, platinum level service. I think what you'll say after that is also platinum level cost. So when you start to talk about capacity, you start to talk about really trying to look at big data sets, it doesn't become scalable in any way, shape or form. Every time you go out to these restructure programs and these renewal programs, your university's a different place than it was 3 years, 4 years, 5 years ago. The requirements change. What the academics are doing changes. What the students want changes. So it's about going out, doing the research, finding out what people want and what are the requirements. The next point really about the changing environment was really important and a key element of why we went back to Proact to look at a different way of delivering these services. Our environment changed. So the shape of the IT department, the size of the IT departments, the way the IT departments were funded, and it made us look at different solutions rather than just standard CapEx style models where you buy the next bit of tin and you put it in. And the other one, as always on every slide when you replace something, is risk. It's old, things are going to break, it's not at capacity, so we've got to look at the next generation. So we had a few options. At the end of the day, get rid of the bespoke elements. Go back to the university and say, your requirements aren't actually that. You don't need to do that. Don't worry about it. We'll put commodity hardware in because it's cheaper. You all know how well that goes. Invest and develop in the current solution. Accept what we've got, but there's an awful lot of work and development, new feature sets that need writing. Invest in people, bring people on board, start to do automation and orchestration. We felt we could do some of that and it would get us to about 3/4 of the functional level we needed. But it's very expensive. There's always a do nothing option, isn't there? So accept the risk and functionality and just walk away from it. Or actually come up with an infrastructure renewal program. clearly, because we're stood here talking about it, we decided we're going to renew the infrastructure, but we're not going to do it on the standard model. We're not going to do it how we've always done these on a CapEx style process. We're going to do something completely different. So we wanted to consume something as a service. We didn't want to have to manage it. We spoke to Proact, spoke to a lot of organisations about the different offerings that people have, the different ways to consume these services. This is all about partnership. It's a partner showcase. We have vendors for all sorts of things. We buy all sorts of services off all sorts of people. This is not about buying things. This is about a partnership. A partner being involved in my day-to-day service delivery, actually taking some of the load off my teams and changing the way we fund things. So I'll pass you on to Andy a little bit, who'll tell you about what they do, about what the service offering is, what they did for the university, and the kind of model that they're trying to get into and we're consuming. Afterwards, it'll come back to me a little bit, and I'll start to tell you a bit of the value that we've seen of it, the benefits realisation that we've seen at the end of it, and what our next steps might be. So I'll hand you over to Andy. Thanks.
Thanks, Andy. So I guess at Proact, we're just the same. I think we've got about 7 Andys at Proact at the moment. So if you say Andy's going to take that action in a meeting, then you're pretty much safe and covered. That's my tactic anyway. Maybe it's just me. I guess sort of my role within Proact, just to explain that. So I'm a technologist at heart. I like things techie. I like sort of all the cloud stuff, the things I've sort of heard today from Chris earlier on, and the chat services. Really, really interesting. So that's really sort of piqued my interest. What that means and how we translated that really for our friends at Durham is we take these really complex, nitty-gritty sort of solutions from customers and we turn them into something that actually relates to infrastructure or technology or cloud services. So my role really is listening to everybody's problems. I'm a bit like an IT agony aunt, and then we can translate it into some cool technologies that actually mean a difference. That's what I like to think I do day to day anyway. So our journey with Durham, as Andy alluded to, we've been a partner for quite a few years. I'm not quite sure how long it is, but we've been a partner for quite a number of years. As he said, we put in the original NetApp solution. It was one of my colleagues that designed that. We continue to support that solution and sort of kept that sort of up and running for a while. When that solution was coming to end of life, we went out to tender. Unfortunately, from Proact's perspective, we didn't win that tender. We actually lost that tender. But we kept in touch. When that solution came back round for renewal again, we decided to have a sit down, have a chat, and we invited Durham along to what we call an EBC, an Exec Briefing Centre. And an EBC is a great sort of showcase for Proact to sort of explain what technologies, what solutions sort of we can offer. But more for us, what the EBC is about is challenging requirements. If you say in a ITT, it must do X, that very often limits the number of vendors and solutions and technologies you can have. So we like to challenge those requirements and actually sort of get to the nitty-gritty of what's the real requirement, what are you trying to achieve. That's the whole purpose of these sort of EBCs. So from the back of this EBC, these are sort of the very high level sort of requirements that sort of we extracted. So really looking to provide a resilient, simple to manage storage solution. We also realised that the metro cluster that was in place at the moment, while it served its purpose and did a really good job, it was platinum service for everything. And there's a lot of data in there that didn't need platinum service. So actually by splitting that kind of data out and tiering it in a different way, we could achieve sort of the same results sort of with less cost. The university had a cloud-first strategy and still does. So we had to then think about how we can integrate with that and how do we make that fit sort of within the cloud. The key thing really that most customers find is storage is the foundation stone, whether it be in the cloud or on-premise. If you get the storage right, everything else fits around it is a lot easier. So that's the key thing to get right. And the university's got the big three project, so network, computing, storage. We had to make sure that whatever we proposed was suitable to connect into the other parts of the infrastructure that were going to be sort of put in place. We're moving on. So when we start looking at the solution and breaking down the requirements a little bit more to get into a little bit of the detail, what we identified was this. I think there's 4 petabytes of storage in total, but when we broke it down into the different tiers, only 300 terabytes of that was the platinum. So that was sort of the stuff that had to be synchronously mirrored, always available. Generally, that was hypervisor, important databases, mission-critical stuff that the university can't run without. So we designed a solution that met that platinum storage tier requirement. The gold and silver tiers, this was sort of the bulk of the storage, so the unstructured data, user shares, staff shares, sort of all that kind of stuff. That, if it went down or wasn't available for a short period of time, it's not the end of the world. Services aren't going to stop functioning. It's frustrating. Users won't be able to get access to their data, but it's not the end of the world. So we looked at how we could replicate that, and we decided to do it on a scheduled basis every hour or what was appropriate to that data set. And that's one example of a requirement in ITT. We respond to lots of ITTs, and I'm sure you guys write lots of ITTs and have to score them. I'm not sure who's got the more difficult job. But quite often in ITT, you'll see a requirement that must do synchronous replication. And of course, everyone then bids with a solution that only synchronously replicates. So by having a more open-ended question in a tender, makes it more difficult to score for you guys, I realise that. But that actually allows us to say we will provide a level of synchronous replication and asynchronous replication as an example. The data obviously for user file shares, CIFS and NFS connectivity, and the university's got a lot of existing scripts. The universities are really good at creating scripts to onboard students. It's a process you guys have to go through sort of every year. The more you can automate, the more time that you can save with those kind of monotonous sort of regular tasks. So we had to provide a solution that would integrate with that as well. And the final tier was this bronze tier. So this is a petabyte. It's great, isn't it? We're using these terms petabytes. It wasn't long ago when we were talking gigabytes and disks and things, but it was just a petabyte of storage. And that was really bulk storage for research data. So that didn't need necessarily high levels of data protection, but it needed to be there. People had come in with terabytes of data, and we needed somewhere to actually drop that data. And of course, all tiers had a flexible data protection depending on the actual value of the data. So they were the requirements, and that's what we had in our heads when we're trying to come out to develop the solution. And the questions we asked and the guidance we gave then helped sort of shape the sort of things that went into the tender. Just so the things were a little bit more open-ended, so we could sort of excel the sort of virtues of the solution. In terms of what we sort of ended up providing, so Proact can provide sort of a range of different solutions, and it's not a sales pitch today. I'm a techie. I don't do selling things sort of very well. The key thing for us was we wanted to build this cloud, and we wanted to build it on-premise. The university had already made a big investment in data centers. They already got 10 gig networking between sites. So we did look at various cloud solutions, and we costed up various models of putting everything into the cloud. The sheer quantity of data just made that hugely expensive, and the open-endedness of the billing model for cloud storage became a bit of a challenge if we drilled into it. So the data ingress and egress charges that you really don't really know until you put things in there. It's a little bit of a guessing game. So we decided to put an on-premise solution in there, so more of a traditional solution. The difference that we made was we wrapped it as a service. So we have these different tiers, we have different levels of data protection, but we wrapped a service around it. So from Durham's point of view, if they need more capacity, they ring up the service desk or log a call through chatbots maybe, or Alexa skills maybe one day, and we provide additional storage, and it gets charged per gigabyte, per tier. So different tiers of storage have got a different cost model. So we're able to give this cloud-like experience, but using different vendors' technologies under the skin, and without having to go back to the IT services guys to actually run and manage an infrastructure. We did that for them for a sort of a cost per gig per month. That's the same in terms of the data protection. So we provide backup as a service. So again, everybody hates backup. Everyone in IT has probably had a backup problem or a restore problem at some stage. We take that away. So that's our problem now. We provide SLAs around that, recovery times and availability SLAs. And of course, it utilises everything that the university's already invested in, so not to waste sort of that investment. So what does this sort of look like? So this is a sort of very high level sort of pictorial view of the solution. The sharp-eyed amongst you will see some of the vendors' logos on the boxes there. And if you've been past our stand in the exhibitors lounge, you probably picked up a pair of Pure socks. So the top tier, the platinum tier, is this Pure storage cluster. So what that effectively means is we can do synchronous replication over IP. It's active-active, so both data centers are live, so we can share and balance services across both data centers. So that met sort of that platinum tier where everything's always available as much as it possibly can be. And basically, from our point of view, as long as one data center that is there and it exists, we can provide a service. So that's where that comes from. The sort of gold, silver, bronze tiers are on different tiers of NetApp storage. So NetApp is probably the vendor out there that does sort of multi-purpose storage really, really well. So CIFS, NFS, ISCS, you name it, whatever you want to connect to it, it can do it. If you want to sort of replicate it, it can do Metro Cluster, but as we said, that was expensive, so we just use replication over IP links now. And what that provides is the right level of storage to the right application, all using sort of a utility pricing, just like you would a cloud provider, with Proact Service Management across the top of it. So we support it if a disk breaks. Well, these days with solid state drives and NVMe drives, you don't actually see things break very often at all. But we do the break fix. We look after it. It's our problem if the service doesn't work. So we own that end to end. And of course, to get there, we use quite a bit of our own consultancy services. We're helping, assisting with migration and advice on sort of the general day-to-day running of the services and all the support. So it's even our break fix guys that go out and replace the components. So we don't like to rely on the vendors because we feel it doesn't give the customer a great experience. If we can own it and it's our problem, then it's in our control to actually fix it. So that's where we tend to be slightly different from this. And I think that's probably all I wanted to say on that one. The one thing, just on the Pure storage actually, the one thing that we size the Pure storage on, one of the things it does very good is efficiency. So a lot of the data in there is going to be hypervisor data. So I'm sure many of you in the room who've worked on storage projects know most arrays these days do dedupe and compression and have all these storage efficiency features. Pure is probably, we've got a range of vendors that we can resell, but Pure is by far the one that achieves the best savings, and particularly in VMware data. So at the moment, I did have a look yesterday, I think we're getting about a 5.1 to 1 saving on that array, which is quite impressive. So we saved it conservatively, sized it conservatively about 3 to 1, and we're actually getting 5 to 1 savings. So what that means is when you're paying a cost per gigabyte on that solution, actually you're not consuming as much storage, so you pay less. So I always put in those efficiency technologies in there, actually can save some money as well at the end of the day. Okay. So what's next then, really? We've talked about sort of the technologies and mixing and matching sort of these vendors. Proact are very good at coming up with these innovative solutions. Sort of my other hat that I wear is going to vendor events and going to sort of seminars such as this, listening to what customers want, listening to what vendors are developing, listening to what the guys in the States are bringing on, and then turning that into solutions that can help our customers. And many of you today have spoke about the hyperscalers, the AWS, the Googles, the Azures in the world. And the traditional storage vendors and Proact were well aware that everybody's slowly moving towards the cloud. It may not be everything, but certain services are more than suitable. So we provide some strategic consulting to actually work out cost-benefit analysis. So we're doing some work with another university at the moment, looking at sort of the cost of the cloud and running services in there permanently versus maybe just putting backup and DR services, and helping you make educated decisions on which application sits best where. And actually, so you're going in with sort of a more guided view of the world, rather than we're just going to try cloud because it sounds cool and everybody else talking about it and it's always in the news. The vendors that we've chose for Durham and the vendors that we work closely with have got storage, computing, networking, HCI products that all integrate to the cloud. So by choosing Pure and NetApp in the example here, they have solutions that will allow themselves to replicate directly into AWS, Azure and Google. So with NetApp and Pure now, we can actually spin up sort of software versions of those appliances in the cloud. So normally, if you're buying some storage from AWS, there's so much per gigabyte, you can go online, you can browse it, and you can consume it and put your credit card in and you've bought it. And that's great. However, if you run a Pure appliance on top of that storage, you pay a little bit more because it takes some compute power, but that will then give them, in this example, 5-to-1 savings. So you're going to use 5 times less cloud storage. So by picking and choosing the relevant bits from all these vendors, we can actually save the cloud costs as well. So we can give you a price if you moved everything to the cloud, and then we can give you a price if you use some of these technologies and integrate it to the cloud as well. And that's really what makes Proact a little bit different. We understand those technologies out there, and we can pick and choose and help you guys sort of shape requirements to actually do that, to give you a flexible consumption model. More recently, we've delivered a lot of security solutions. Our security team have been working, we've had quite a small but efficient security team. We've picked the right tools. We use AI a lot in our security to manage our managed service customers and to make sure the systems that we run in our data centers are secure. And more recently, we started offering those services out, and we're scaling them out to offer out to customers. We think it's cool. We think it's protected our environment for a very long time. So we're also able to offer those services out. So maybe a conversation for a later day on that one. But that's where we come to things, and that's sort of the future and sort of what's next from our side.
Thanks, Andy. So the reason Andy's really keen on the savings is because what he's probably forgotten is it's actually underwritten in the contract. If we don't get those savings, he pays for it. The whole thing's called enabling storage services. So it's a pleasure as an infrastructure manager to sit here and listen to somebody else talk about the infrastructure that I run, because I don't have to do it anymore. And that's the whole point of this. This is a few milestones about sort of how we put this in, which I'll rattle through, and we'll start to talk about some of the benefits we've realised from having this contract in place. So we've discussed, we went through the standard tender process, award. The third line there, technical due diligence, again, this is all about the partnership. So we chose NetApp. It has the functionality required, it has all of those little nuances that our infrastructure is built around. Pure Store was brand new to us. We had no idea what it was all about. So part and parcel of the due diligence process, which Andy and I went to see Pure to talk about their software, their development track, what they're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve, who they are. As part of that, we completely changed some of the backup process because we realized that they already had a development stream in place that meant a lot of the infrastructure we were going to buy as part of the solution wasn't required anymore. And it knocked off somewhere in the region of 10% of the bill immediately. That's the kind of thing we get from partners. That's what we want from partners. So we finalized that design, went through the implementation. I'll rattle through these because they were genuinely this simple. There was no histrionics here. There was no problems. The storage as a service sign-off. Now, the way we went through the process, architecture, sales, architecture. By the way, the salesman's Andy as well. Sales architecture, we then went through the whole build process, implementation process. These are all teams. This is all smooth handoffs. We then go into the as a service contract. So we built a service operating manual with Proact. Who are the contacts? What are the SLAs? What are the expectations? Who are the people at Durham we need to speak to? What are the phone numbers? It all got flushed out as part of the contract. What are the services we're going to run on them, so they understand my business, they understand what we're trying to achieve, and they can deliver against that. When we ring them, they know. And all of that enables the rest of it, really. So Proact have done all of that. They've put it in the data centres, their engineers have been there. What I wanted my teams to do is say, we're also a service provider. My customers just happen to be staff, students, professional services, etc., etc. So how are we going to build those services? And I'll come on to those in a bit. But that enabled us to do that. So we built our services. The one thing we've just done recently, part and parcel of this, again, I don't manage this anymore. I don't patch it, I don't fix it, I don't bring the operating system versions up to date, I don't do anything. It's all part of the contract. So we've now had our first patch run, everything's up to date, everything's done, all the SLAs were met, everything stayed online, and I didn't do a thing. Most importantly, we're live. So that was right the way from the executive briefing, right the way to live. It was about a 12-month process. But this is a big project. It's a lot of stories, a lot of moving components. Pretty fast, really. So what did we enable? It's about enabling services. So the one thing I've said time and time again to my line management and the rest of the university is we've got this 80-20 focus, but we've got it wrong. So at the minute, I've got my teams, 80% of the time, it's about managing infrastructure, patching, fixing things, doing tender processes, doing all sorts of things. And 20% of the time, they're looking inside the university and adding value. They're developing things that the people, the professional services, the staff and the students actually want to consume. This is about the journey to fix that and turn that around. So because we've got prescribed services here, we've got this concept of the well-found laboratory. You may or may not have heard that term before. You come to work, you can expect a seat, a desk, lights on, you can expect heating on in the winter. Part of it's IT provision. So we've been able to define, because the services are tiered and defined, what's part of your well-found laboratory, what can you expect when you come to Durham University, and make that as a service catalogue. All of those offerings are now very, very clear. People know what they get, people know what they're entitled to, people know how to get it. The bit we developed, self-service provisioning. We did a lot of time. We've spent a lot of time out in the university at the minute speaking to research academics, which I don't recommend. What do you want? What do you want to see? They don't want to have to, we've talked about chatbots and AI, they don't want to have to pick the phone up and talk to somebody. The way we've dealt with it in this particular instance is we've given them self-service portals. So that's the benefit I've got. My staff can now develop those instead of having to look after things. Show back, charge back, workflows. Oddly enough, the university does really sensible things sometimes in the research space, which is when you've got a grant proposal, I need this resource, I need this person, etc., etc. Why isn't IT part of that workflow? Now it is, because we've got prescribed services. All the automation orchestration that goes around it. Here's the big one. Remove IT blocks. IT are always a blocker to things. IT won't let me do this. IT won't let me do that because it's a central service. It doesn't meet our requirements. Well, quite frankly now, it's his problem. So if they've got research grant money and the storage isn't big enough, all they do is pay it and he has to provide it. All I have to do is say yes and provide the actual storage for the self-service tool. No problem. That's a huge shift in focus for us, and again, ease of expansion. So that's what it is. It's foundational. It's solid foundations. We've built them. Let's build on them. Let's build services, automation, orchestration. Let's use these things. What's next? I've also got compute. I've got virtualization stacks. I've got networks. I've got all sorts of things in my infrastructure. Why not? There's other opportunities out there. There are other models out there. It's working for us. Andy's mentioned the cloud integration. That's great. And archival, really, how do we then utilize things like the Azure space, et cetera, et cetera. So it's all about, my time, I can do the things I want to do, and I can just let him do that. So I'm an avid home brewer. I have a microbrewery in the garage. That's what I want to do. I don't want to have to look after IT anymore. My teams want to develop things, so that's great. That's it, really. It's about working together. It's about the partnerships. It's about the infrastructure and the journey we've been on. If you've got any questions about beer or brewing process, I've got no problems answering. I'll tolerate some IT ones as well. Thank you. Come on, somebody, a brewing question.
Thank you. We're at the University of Kent, we're struggling more with our charging model for what we're charging for storage. And I just wonder, could you give me an idea of how much you charge per gigabyte to
Depends on the
research
service.
projects? Sorry?
It depends on the service.
So it's quite bespoke to each customer, so we don't just have a vanilla cost model. Unfortunately, it would make my life a lot easier. We could just say it's X. And that's because we do like to design it to match the requirements and make it very bespoke. So certainly we could have a sort of an off-the-record conversation. We give you a rough idea, but in terms of how many times you want to replicate it, whether you want it snapshotted, and what levels of SLA, what performance, what capacity, what you think it might grow to, that's all the kind of things that feed in, and whether you want it to replicate to the cloud. So
I think my question was more around, like, if you have a research project that you're doing a grant for, what would they put on their application if it's like £1 a gigabyte or something like that?
So it's, there seems to be an industry standard, and that's £100 a terabyte a year. And we've got some services that come in way below that, and we've got some services that come in way above that. But the cost model that research academics seem to accept is £100 a terabyte a year.
Okay.
Now that depends on replication, backup, longevity of archival, etc., etc. But there's your level. We've got above and beyond.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thanks very much.
thanks, everyone.